Hey everyone, welcome to the Kensington Sales Group series on prospecting for government clients. My name is Evan Bender and I'm joined today by my colleague Mike Dombo. One of the things we wanted to cover today was objections. They occur pretty much on every call that you make, and it's critical to know what to do when you're faced with a challenge from a prospect. I know might give a lot of thoughts around how to be ready for those objections before they even come your way. So if you could do me a favor, walk us through how you prepare for them.
Absolutely. First and foremost, you need to codify the most common objections that you're going to get. If you're literally a brand new startup and just kind of starting out, take a guess and then refine them as you go. But generally, most of the things that we work on, you're going to know ahead of time. Some of the objections might be they have a competitor or they do it on Excel, depending on what you're, trying to sell to them. But you codify them, make a list, literally write it down, and then write your best response, your best rebuttal to each one of them, and memorize it. And when you get one, it's like rote memorization. You can just spit it back out. You have to refrain from answering it too quickly. Give yourself a couple of seconds to actually make it feel like a conversation for the prospect. It's once you've heard it a dozen times, it becomes like a knee-jerk reaction. And then once you have a handle on the basic objections that you're going to get, further refine them. The rebuttals could be tailored depending on what you know about that prospect, and there's any number of ways that you could even make them better. And then really, what is an objection, right? Is it a real legitimate objection that you do need to fight, or are they just giving you a polite no? If you hear, we don't have budget. Well, yeah, I know we haven't spoken before, so you probably haven't budgeted us in yet. Or if they have a competitor, it is budgeted, but it's sometimes they're just telling you no without actually wanting to say no. And that I think we'll talk a little further on here going forward, but make a list, study it, and refine it.
Yeah, and if I could kind of build on that, the other thing is that list should be always evolving. I know you mentioned kind of editing those rebuttals and making them as good as possible, but you're constantly going to hear new objections, and make sure you add those to your list. Make sure that you're talking through with teammates and colleagues. See if they have any other ideas. Like everybody handles these differently, and you can learn a lot from running these ideas by colleagues.
And I might argue, if you don't have a little bit of a volley, right, as we call it, the back and forth, is it really a prospect? Are they really engaged with what you're saying? And you ought to naturally have a little bit of uh, questioning, if you would, even on the prospect's part. But yeah, the objections, you're not going to get around them. You're not going to find a keen way to avoid it. You have to hit it head on.
Yeah, and to kind of to your point on the volley, at some point we want to win the volley. How do we get out of that objection and rebuttal volley and get an agreement on next steps?
Yeah, like I said, this will be an integral part of cold calling and something you're just going to need to get good at. Um, you're not going to avoid it. People are going to have objections, but each time you get one, acknowledge that it's valid. If it is valid, right, as we just said, sometimes they're not real objections to what you're pitching. It's another type of objection, but um, basically acknowledge that it's a valid objection, and then come back with your retort. I always think it's helpful if you can tie it back to why other clients have decided to make the switch. Like, hey, yep, we've seen that plenty of times. We work with other departments or jurisdictions that had that exact setup, and then this is how we help. But ultimately, I'm not making a sale on a cold call. All I really want to do is get them to get some interest in getting on the next step, meaning you're not going to close them. You're not going to answer all their questions. Hey, that's actually a great point. We've seen that plenty of times before. Hey, would you be available next week to have a call with us? I'd like to see if you have other colleagues who could join, and I could certainly bring in a couple of my colleagues on this end to show you what we do. Um, it's the old 3 yards in a cloud of dust, right? Sorry to mix sports metaphors here, but just want to get to the next stage in that initial outreach. You could go further, and sometimes they do. They're truly interested. And if you're not the subject matter expert, very easy conversion is, hey, that's exactly what I was hoping we could find 30 minutes on the calendar, convert it to that next step in the sales process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know we always talk about it as a team. There's that line, right, of when to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and when you should just disengage for now. Maybe you can revisit the opportunity later and
It's a
not do
fine,
yourself
yeah,
any
there's a
harm.
fine line between legitimately answering somebody's sales objections to badgering them into taking a meeting, which is not going to end well if the meeting happens at all. You usually just want to be persistent without being pushy, without turning them off. And sometimes you just caught them at a bad time. Maybe you just want to get to the time you can reach out to them again. So yeah, you got to walk the line.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. I really appreciate all the insight. Hope everybody enjoyed this video, and thanks for joining us on this edition of our Prospecting for Government Client series. If you guys have any questions or want to talk more about this, we'll put a link to the website as well as a link to schedule some time with us to talk through it. Our website, if you don't see the link, is at www.kensingtonsalesgroup.com. Thanks everybody for joining. Hope you all have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Evan.